wealth management and
monthly installment at 1.88%.
how to select the right property to buy.
1 km. It's 1 km. Yeah, let me check.
Alright, so welcome back to our Investors series on Tuesdays, and as mentioned last week, we are going to kickstart this new launch review series. So actually we did a new launch review series a couple of months back. So if you were to go to our PropertyLimBrothers YouTube channel, you'll notice that there's actually this playlist called the new launch review series, where previously we actually have reviewed this project called Affinity at Serangoon. We have also talked about riverfront residences, and of course what we're going to do this time around is go through some of the many launches that is in place for the year 2019 and 2020, so that you as a consumer, you will know roughly how to really select a new launch for your investment. So a little disclaimer before we even proceed is that what we are going to share is purely out of our own opinion and our own personal analysis. I think as a consumer, as an investor and a property buyer, I think importantly you need to do your own due diligence when you finally want to select the very product that you want to buy. Also, we are making a general comparison, and it's by no means whereby we want to go and scrutinize each and every project. It's basically based on our own analysis. If we were to buy that ourselves, what are some of the things that we actually look out for as a consumer? Also, we have a condition to this whole entire series. This is for people who are already sold on new launches. That means you are already very clear that you want to buy a new launch, you don't want to buy a resale property, and you just want to compare between the different types of new launches. Alright, so before we dive into the different kinds of projects right now that's available in the market, why don't we recap on what are some of the pros and some of the cons of buying a new launch development, so that you will be extremely sure on what are some of the pluses and what are some of the minuses when you buy a new launch development in Singapore. Why don't we have a look at some of the cons? Alright, so let's talk about the first con of buying a new launch, which is the PSF tends to be higher. So the per square feet pricing of a new launch development tends to be higher. I think that is definitely understandable, because if you were to see how does a new launch even come about, so it's either from the government land sales or it's from an en-bloc sale that has happened. That means developer has acquired an old development, top up the lease, or if it's freehold already, so they have to tear down and rebuild. So it's either from government land sales or it's from an en-bloc activity that has happened. So in both scenarios, there's cost of acquiring the land, and developers definitely have to make a profit on top of the land price that they've acquired. There's construction costs, there's design costs, architectural costs, plus the profit margin that developer will usually want to buffer in. If not, there's no point in them actually launching a government land sales and bid the project with a certain price. So definitely the per square foot of new launch development will tend to be higher than the resale project. But of course, nowadays with the series of cooling measures and of course the total debt servicing ratio, what you have noticed in the market is that developer, although the per square foot is higher, they tend to keep the overall quantum price slightly at a more acceptable range in terms of the total price quantum. So naturally, when this happens with higher per square foot, overall quantum price is kept at a range that most people can afford. It would then mean that size of the unit will become smaller. So the second thing is that when you buy a new launch in today's market, the size of the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, or 3 or 4 bedder is of course smaller than that of the resale counterpart. So you get higher per square foot pricing, get smaller size in exchange for buying a new project. The third thing is the waiting time. When you want to buy a new launch, definitely you have to wait between 2, 3 or 4 years. Some of the projects that goes through en bloc on paper, you will even stipulate up to 5 years. But usually because developers, they are geared towards completing the project faster in order not to spend too much time on a project with increasing labor costs and construction costs. So usually on paper, although it states like 4 to 5 years, but if we see the actual TOP date, it usually is slightly faster by up to 9 months to 12 months. So typically I think it's good to prep yourself that you have to wait for about 3 years before you can collect your keys, and that will mean that if you have already sold your place, you might have to rent. If not, you might have to stay with parents, or you might have to make alternative accommodation. The final thing which we think is one of the cons of a new launch is that you're buying off plan, so you cannot get to see the actual unit. You're technically speaking buying off the show flat, so you can only visit the show flat, you can only look at this whole site plan, the whole site model. You can't get to see the actual view. You can't really visualize, like when you're standing at a balcony, what are you looking outwards, and the road noise, is there any block blockage, and of course, does the show flat really depicts the size of your actual units? Of course, now developers are being regulated by Singapore authorities to build the show flat as close to the actual unit as possible. So right now, I would say that in terms of actual show flat visitation is pretty safe in a sense. The only thing probably that you can't really visualize is your view, and because you're buying off the plan, you can't really know who are your potential neighbors on the same level. If let's say this is like a common lobby that's 4 to 6 units, you can't really know who are your neighbors in a sense. So these are the 4 things that we think are some of the cons of buying a new launch development. So let's look at the pros that a lot of people enjoy in buying a new launch project. But of course, when you buy a new development, this is something that is brand new. Brand new in the sense that the building age is new, the land age is also new. So take note that you usually buy a 99 years brand new development. The lease actually starts from the day that the developer bid for the land. So usually when you take possession during TOP, your lease is already depleted by about 3 to 4 years, depending on when the land has been bid. Alright, so technically speaking, when you take keys during TOP, it has a balance of about probably 96 years or 95 years, which is why when you buy, you have to see what is the land age versus the TOP date. So these 2 dates are different. Because you're buying something new, which is the first plus point, you have new land lease, you have new building age, you technically also do not need to do a lot of renovation in the interior of the unit when you take possession, which brings us to the second plus point. Most of the new launches, they already come with pre-built kitchens. So the whole kitchen has already been pre-built, including all your kitchen carpentry, your oven, your stove, your hood. Plus, nowadays developers usually throw in a fridge as well. They throw in stuff like your washer cum dryer. So technically speaking, your whole kitchen and your yard is being taken care of. The aircons are all already included for the entire unit. The wardrobes are already pre-built, including the entire fit out for your bathrooms. Most of the time, what you need to do is basically to fit out all your lights. So buy your light choices, fit out all the lights, put in your blinds, your zip tracks and stuff like that, and usually you're good to go. So that will potentially save you money on renovation. So unlike a resale property, usually you have to spend probably about 40 to 100,000 to revamp the entire place, but maybe in a new launch development, most of the things are already new, it's all taken care of. You probably need to set aside between 20 to 40,000 depending on the extensiveness of what you want to do with your unit. That brings us to the third point. A lot of people likes to buy new launch development because of the new architectural design, the new facility zones, and the fact that it is modernized and it is kept on par with today's design in terms of landscaping, in terms of site plan, in terms of the way that the whole project is being planned to benefit the consumers and the residents that is ultimately staying there. For example, with more and more facilities that every project have, so basically kids and families, they can enjoy their time during the weekend. And so a lot of projects now have a minimum of 30 to 100 different types of facilities. And that brings us to the fifth point, which is in terms of pricing, everybody enters at the same price. And this is actually one of the very important thing that a lot of buyers are looking out for, because it is different from a resale project. At a new launch, what happens is that everybody enters at the same level of per square foot pricing, and for every similar bedroom type, you actually enter at around the same price. The only key difference is, of course, your facing has different pricing, your floor level has different pricing, but in terms of the overall per square foot, you're technically entering at about the same pricing as the rest of the new residents. So for example, if your project has about 800 units, and of the 800 units, there's like 200 of them are 3 bedrooms. So this 200 3-bedroom owners technically are buying into the project at about the same price. And if you have looked at our previous episodes in our Investors and Us series, we actually talk about the importance of the volume versus the valuation, and how does entering at the same price actually creates a platform when all these residents want to exit in future, when it TOPs or a couple of years down the road. Because of the fact that everybody enters at the same price, they more or less have that cohesiveness when they want to exit. So for example, let's say if 10 of us were to buy this product together at, let's say, $1,000, and then we need to hold this product for 3 years, and all of us wants to make a certain amount of profit. So maybe 3 years later, all of us will at least want to sell for $1,200 to make a $200 profit, and nobody will go and sell it at $800, assuming that this is something that will appreciate in value just like property. So being at the level whereby all 10 of us enter at the same price at $1,000, all of us have that kind of mentality that we want to have a minimum profit margin when we exit in future because of our holding costs and stuff like that. So it is actually like a similar theory, and because of a mixture of factors where the valuation of the property in the resale market is heavily tacked on the amount of transactions in the project itself, I think you really have to watch the previous episode where we explain explain in detail. We took close to about 10 minutes to explain this, so refer back to our playlist and then have a look at it. The sixth thing is, of course, for a new launch, you enjoy this thing called the 12 months defect liability period from the developer from the point that it reaches TOP. After you take your keys, you still have like a good 12 months to go where you can actually report defects to the developer and then they will come to fix it up for you. This is not present in the resale market because when you buy something from the resale market, it's an as-is condition. And then we have number 7, your installments are actually on a progressive payment schedule. So when you buy today, you take keys 3 years later, basically your payment in terms of installment is staggered over the entire period. So you have a progressive payment plan. You don't have to kickstart your installment in one go, unlike in the resale market. For example, if you're buying a $1.5 million property and then your installment is like $4,800 a month, when you buy something off the new launch market, your first installment could be like $800 followed by $1,003, and then you hit $2,000 and then you hit $2,006, and then all the way until the TOP date, then your installment will probably be close to the full amount. But it's not even a full amount yet when you reach the TOP date where you collect your keys. At TOP, you can technically move in, renovate, you can stay in the place, but your installment will only be in the full amount, usually 1 year after TOP, which is what we call the statutory completion, where it reaches the CSC stage. So you have a good 3 to 4 years to basically taper off your installment payment if you're on the progressive payment schedule. And that's one key thing that a lot of buyers love to have when they buy new launch developments. And that brings us to the last 2 points. During this waiting period while the project is being constructed, technically speaking, you do not have to pay for any property tax because property tax has not kicked in. You don't have to pay for the monthly maintenance fee as well because it has not kicked in as well. So basically these two are put on hold all the way until it reaches TOP. Alright, so that sums us up for the pros of getting into a new launch development versus the cons of getting a new launch development. And next week, we're going to start in detail on some of the projects that we are going to share with you further. So we hope that this is a good intro episode for you. See you soon. Alright, so for more information on investing in new developments, do head out to our website at PropertyLimBrothers.com and as well as our YouTube channel under Investor Series, and we will see you soon.